to Tips and Tricks.
And this is our first episode on tips and tricks.
And today we're going to talk about 8 tips to stay safe in the current. Hey, we're Ola and Martin, and together we're OMD, scuba diving instructors with 12 years of combined experience. Join us every week as we share part of our diving life, tips, tricks, dive site and gear reviews that we hope will inspire you.
But for now, gear up, subscribe and enjoy this episode of OMD.
So number 1, dive briefing. So what's your thoughts on this? What's your experience, Ola, in dive briefing? And
because we're working currently, or I'm working currently as a diving instructor, you have a lot of experience on that as well. Something that happens very often is that briefing is being like let in one ear and let out another immediately, because people are already excited what's going to happen later on. However, from the experience, we know that the briefing is crucial because every part of the briefing makes sense. It's actually there. We talk about those things during the briefing because they're crucial for this particular dive, which, as it comes to currents, is about safety.
Yeah, exactly. And as we know from experience, that your dive guide or whoever's doing your briefing will be telling you exactly the things that you need to be aware of on that particular dive, because obviously it's different depending on what area of the world that you're diving in, whether you're diving on coral reefs or whether you're diving in more volcanic areas like Waring. So there's different strategies for each area. So you really need to concentrate on that briefing and listen to what your dive guide or whoever's making the briefing is saying.
Yes. Okay, well, second thing, once we already fully briefed and we listened, is how to get into the water. So we have more or less 3 options, I would say. Shore dives, rib dives, and dives from big boats. What I usually do here in Canary Islands and Tenerife are mainly rib dives, but also shore dives. So as you could see in our previous video about Las Eras dive, it's a shore dive, so you go in from the beach and then you basically get ready, make sure you're safe, and then you just descend. With a rib, once you go into the water, you need to make sure that you stay close to the rib, which means when you go back, your BCD or wing is fully inflated and you grab the boat or the sideline as soon as possible, because otherwise you will be just, drifting away from the boat. If it actually happens, there also is an extra drift line, which is behind the boat, obviously, so you can always grab that one. So it's super important to stay very close to the boat and then get into position where you will be able to descend. I know that you have a lot of experience with liveaboards and big boats, so what would that be? Okay,
so there's a couple of different ways for bigger boats. So anything from speedboats, you're going to do a giant stride entry rather than the back roll from a rib. And depending on what you're doing, if you're going to be doing a drift dive, so that means that the boat is just going to pull into position and then the horn will go, or however the captain will announce it to you guys. You all have to be in your team, and then you do your giant stride together so that you can all stay together. But sometimes even on the big boats, you're lucky enough to get a mooring on one of the dive sites. So if you're on the mooring, which will be told to you in your briefing, you need to do your giant stride in, fully inflated BCD, and then grab onto the mooring line, and then your dive guide or dive leader will take you down, and you'll go down just like you would do on the rib, one hand over the other, nice and slowly, always holding the line on the way down, all the way down to the bottom, or if you're on a coral reef, just off the bottom, because we don't want to be touching them corals.
Yeah, so as you already started, so once we're in the water, we're getting ready to descend. So from the shore dive, we descend obviously in the shallows before the current occurs. If you actually swim out to the current that is already on the surface, you will be, again, just washed away, and then you'll just keep on drifting. And with shore dive, there's absolutely no one who can actually help you out. So make sure you descend before the current occurs, okay? With the rib, once we're in the water, we usually get to the anchor line, and then we descend holding the anchor line up, like all the way down to the bottom. Because if you let it go, even a meter over or 2 meters over the bottom, you will be, you know, drifting away, which is then very difficult to stay in a group. So all the way down to the bottom, and then we begin the dive once the whole group is already set. As you mentioned with a mooring and other options, how about the...
Okay, so if you're doing a free descent from a bigger boat, what you'll do is, like I said before, you'll all go in as a team, and then your dive leader will give you the okay and the descend, and it's just a free descent, because usually on them dives you're doing a drift dive. So basically you're not having to navigate back to a mooring line, so it's a bit easier. So you'll all go down as one, and then obviously your guide will keep checking on you, making sure you're all right. And then basically it's just you going with the current, Superman style. Yeah, the easiest type of diving there is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, so once we're already down under, where do we go?
Exactly. So next is which direction. Now, as I just said on the free descent, usually that's a drift dive, so you're going with the current. So you'll start at one end of a reef and generally end 3/4 of the way down, or right at the end of the reef, depending on air consumption and things. But obviously with shore dives and ribs, which is what you mainly do, Ola, so why don't you tell us how you dive in currents there?
Yeah, well then direction depends on the current, obviously, because we need to navigate from and back to the anchor line or shore, which means that we will be going against the current, into the current, yes, English phrasing. So we basically go this way, okay, against the current, which means this will allow us to estimate more or less how much air we're using on the way out, in order to then very easily drift back to the anchor line or to the shore.
Yeah, and the same on the big boats, on the liveaboards and things like that. If you've got the mooring, you do exactly the same thing. You will generally start going into a current and then come back like as a drift, as you said. So exactly the same principles for whenever you're on a mooring line or an anchor line, basically. The only difference is the drift dives, where it's just free and easy. So that's it. Okay, so next what we're going to do is number 5, which is how to move in a current. Now, obviously, like I've stated, with drift diving, it's simple. You do Superman position and you just go with that current. But again, Ola's got more navigational and
anchor line
dives than I do. So you tell us.
Well, how to move, I would say as least as possible. Okay, do it slowly. First of all, try to use as least air as possible, but also, you know, remember about your breathing and energy. So we do it our own pace. If we go against the current, we usually deflate our BCD to be as heavy as possible on the bottom, and then we kind of crawl. It's kind of like horizontal climbing, and we do it also, you know, using spaces and gaps that are sheltered from the currents or can make it easier. We try to stay close, but we don't have to be holding our fins unless somebody needs assistance. So we do it our own pace against the current, and then when it's time to go back, we do the Superman.
Just a little disclaimer here. Obviously, if you're on a coral reef, you do not do that. That is the opposite of what you do.
We don't touch the corals for their
no
safety.
touching the corals. So again, going back to your dive briefing, like we were saying before, your dive guide is going to give you the best information on that dive site. So if you're in a coral reef, you want to still swim quite close to the coral, but you do not want to be touching that coral. You want to be off it so you're not kicking it, and obviously you're not holding it. And usually your dive leader is going to have a navigational route that they will know, because they're going to be experienced on it, of how to help navigate through that dive site, whether it's like you said with shelters, or if it's a sandy bottom next to a coral reef, how to be able to rest without actually using too much air. Yeah. Lots of different ways to actually do it, so it's just depending on that specific dive site and what your dive briefing is going to be.
Yeah, next one is number 6, which are signals. Signals, Marty will demonstrate you underwater, but yes, I guess
we did this the other day on a dive, on the Las Aires dive, when there actually wasn't any current, but we did do the signals. No, what I will say is on the signal where I use this, which is normally slow down, I also use that myself personally as a kind of relaxed, kind of take it easy to people, so that they know that to just calm down and obviously just breathe and just relax.
Yeah, exactly. Just take your time until you're ready. Just don't move, don't go anywhere until you're actually feeling okay with your breathing. But also I think this sign, which means go to the bottom, obviously, as you mentioned, if it's a coral reef, we're not going all the way down. But if it's rocks or anything else, then we can actually go all the way down to the bottom, because that's the easiest way to avoid strong currents.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so these are the signals, yeah?
Okay, yeah. So here we go.
Okay. Okay, number 7. We finished the dive and now it's time to go back. How do we go back? How do we ascend?
How do we ascend?
So, shore dives, obviously we just go back to the shallows. We do safety stop usually on the way if it's possible, or if not, we go to the shallows and then we do a safety stop and surface. With diving from and to the anchor line, we go all the way to the rope and literally go up this way to a safety stop on 5 meters for 3 minutes, and we do the safety stop. However, remember that if it's a current dive, you basically end up all drifting one way, yeah? So in order not to kick our dive buddies or anyone from the group, it's quite easy. You can locate yourself, position yourself one over on top or under, because the safety stop doesn't have to be strictly on 5 meters. Yeah, it can be 5.5, can be 6, it can be 4.5. So there's plenty of space for you to position yourself in order not to kick anyone else. Yeah.
And also on some of the buoys on the mooring lines, they actually have at 5 meters drift lines that a few people can get on, so that then it makes it easier for the group to actually get on there. So you can all get between that 5 and 6 meters in depth, which is ideal. But like Ola says, just try and keep yourself held on and just try and keep yourself as horizontal as possible with the least amount of movement. Exactly. And then you're not going to disrupt yourself or any other diver when you're doing it.
Please don't play cool to make like a technical diving position trying to stay in one place, because you will actually drift away. So that's not the time for practicing technical diving, okay?
And the other type of ascent is on the drift dive. So at the end of a drift dive, your dive leader will generally give you the signal that you're going to safety stop, and then you're all going to go up nice and steady. until you get to between 5 and 6 meters, and then it's your responsibility to put up your DSMB.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, and then you can sit at your safety stop and you can hang on to your DSMB or just hover in the water, because it doesn't really matter, because as soon as you get to the surface, that's when you're going to signal the boat anyway, so there's no specific things. Just make sure you watch your computer and make sure you're staying at that 5 to 6 meter level until your 3 minutes is up.
Yeah, we'll cover DSMBs and how to do it safely in another episode.
Tips and tricks.
Tips and tricks, yeah.
Okay, so the last one is obviously once we've done our ascent and our safety stop is getting back onto the boat. Obviously, with shore dives, it's nice and
surface,
easy.
that's easy.
We surface, we just swim back to waist deep water, take our fins off, and minding the waves, the surf, just get out nice and calm, and hopefully, fingers crossed. But getting back onto the boat, do you want to take us through how to get back onto a rib?
Yeah. So I would suggest, and it's a pretty good tip, I think, is once your safety stop is done and you're cleared, you surface, because imagine there's 5 people surfacing at the same time with a strong current. It's difficult to hold to the boat as a group. So as soon as someone's already cleared, it's always better to go one by one, because then the captain or whoever helps on the boat is capable to help you out quicker, and then you're not hanging with a strong current on the surface, So once we're on the surface, we inflate fully our BCD or a wing to stay positively buoyant. We hold on tight with one hand to the boat, and then we take the gear, the weights first, and then take the gear second, so it's easier for us to hop on the boat, which means always one hand on the boat, we unclip everything, we pass it on the boat, and then until you're 100% sure that you're safe to hop on the boat with a ladder, you don't take your fins or you don't take your mask off, okay? Remember that there's always a current that can take you off. You may actually need to look down for fixing your fin or anything else, so keep your mask on and then take the fins on when you're holding to the ladder. Then you can either ask someone to help you with the fins or take them off and then hop on the boat.
Yeah. Very important that always keeping your mask on the surface.
Yes, please do. Don't put it on your forehead.
Yeah, especially the forehead, yeah. We had someone lose a mask, didn't we?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's unfortunately very common.
Yeah.
It looks very stylish. Don't get me wrong. Perfect for a photo shoot, but it's not really useful.
It's
and
not
you
practical.
and then you just lose your favorite mask. So what's the point? Just keep it on your face.
Slightly different for the bigger boats, for the liveaboards and bigger dive boats. So obviously for that you can actually keep most of your equipment on. There'll be the drift line at the back, and basically your dive leader will get you all to hold on to that first and then help you one by one onto the ladder. And usually a dive guide will be by the ladder or will be on the drift line instructing you, but it'll be all in your briefing as well. And all you do there, unless you've got any disabilities or any back problems or anything like that, then you will keep all your equipment on, including your weight belt, and all you will do is grab on to the ladder, take one fin off, pass it up to the boat boy or to the captain, whoever's on the boat, and make sure you plant that foot onto the ladder. Okay, so you've got something steady, and then lift the other one, take your second fin off, hand that up, 2 hands on the ladder, keeping your mask and your regulator in. For that, just in case wave comes, you fall back, you've still got your regulator in your mouth so you can still breathe, and your mask on so you can still see. So again, you'll have fully inflated BCD or wing, and all you do then is climb up. Whoever's on the boat will grab your tank and usually help assist you up the ladders and then back to your spot on the actual dive boat, on the dive platform, hook your tank on, and then from there you unclip your BCD and your weights and you place them. Place the weights on the floor, and the BCD will still be attached to your tank. Exactly the same when you're on a big boat going up a mooring line. Same principles apply on that one as well. Okay, so always hand your cameras up and torches up first, and then do your fins.
Yeah, it's important to get rid of all the accessories that are precious to you and valuable, which means it's important for you to pass them on the boat as first, because then you have two hands to stay safe, and that's super important.
And you're not worrying about dropping your camera
Yes,
or your expensive torch or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that covers it. Yeah, that was top 8.
But the number 1?
Breathing! Please listen because it's your safety. Okay, we're here for your safety.
And also it makes the dive more fun if you listen and you understand exactly how things are going to go before you actually get down there, and then you're not going to be shocked by the current.
Yeah.
So listen up and stay safe.
Yeah.
And that's it for now. We'll see you in next week's video of tips and tricks.
Tips and tricks.
Tips and tricks.
Bye.
Bye.